Two retired detectives that were in the thick of New York crime, fast and hectic. They got some stories and some jokes, even an interview with the most popular folks. Off the cuff, one episode just ain't enough. Get a little laughter and an interview too. It's maybe the best thing you can do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon. Sorry we had a little bit of glitch in the first one. That's when, I'm juggling things. I'm doing too many things at once, and I actually made a mistake. I must admit I made a mistake, and it was all my fault. But here we are live right now. I'm back from Florida. I was in Florida Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I came back late last night, and I know my co-host, Phil Grimaldi, straight out of Brooklyn, is going through YouTube withdrawal. He's like, oh my God. He's like, come on back. Come on. Oh my God, to do an episode. So here we are, Philly. Great to have you back, man.
Thank you, Billy, and welcome back. I'm so glad to be on the podcast again. Like you said, I was kind of walking in circles the last day or two. What am I going to do with myself? But
his wife was like, hey, Phil's got nothing to do now. You can just stir the sauce so many times, Yeah.
I wish I had nothing to do. I was actually busy trying to keep myself busy while we were on our little couple of day hiatus. But Bill, I don't know if it's streaming on YouTube. I have the YouTube up and it's still frozen from the banner. Now, I don't know if on your end, if you can see that it's streaming. Because I'm not seeing it.
I can't tell if it is. The folks on the
maybe
phone,
somebody could put it in the chat because
I think the folks on the phone should be seeing it because they're in the chat. You guys seeing it on
give
YouTube?
us some ones if you're seeing it.
Give us a one if you've seen it on YouTube, because that was the problem before.
Yeah.
I see that it's showing on both of them, so I think we're okay.
Maybe it's just my
yeah, it is streaming on YouTube, so we're all right.
Okay.
Sorry, guys, we had some technical difficulties today. Anyway, one of the case, Vicky Gallen gave us a one, Rita Schaefer, Finn Freak, Jen Groth. Thank you guys so much for
okay, we're good.
I'm going to put those ones. We're good. I almost didn't want to cover this case, but it's such a big case and it's such an important case. And that's the crowd surge at the Travis Scott concert in Houston, where so far it left 8 people dead. And it's really a scary thing. We all go to major events, whether it be a football game, a concert, a baseball game, and you always want to, you sort of take for granted that security is going to be good enough to protect you, protect your loved ones. We all have kids. I know Philly's got 3 daughters. I'm sure you must be terrified when they go to a concert these days.
Absolutely.
But it seemed, if you watch this, and I'm going to play some of the video from it, it is downright scary. It is really scary because there were warnings before the concert started that many people who had not bought tickets just stormed the gates. And I'm going to show you some of that. But having said that, this is not unprecedented. This has happened in other concerts. I think it was in 1991 at CCNY in New York City. And actually the rapper P. Diddy, or he used to be called Puff Daddy, he was the promoter behind that show. And 8 people or 9 people were crushed to death because they oversold the concert. And when people were going into this, there was a charity basketball game and then a rap concert. When people were going in, there was like an 8 or 10 foot hallway, and people that had bought tickets but weren't allowed in because it was oversold, they pushed their way in and the doors were locked, and people in the front got crushed to death, or something we call a strain asphyxia. When your chest cannot expand, you will die. You'll go into cardiac arrest and you'll die. And I think that's pretty much what happened during this case. In 1979, The Who in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, had a concert, and I believe 11 people were crushed to death. Same thing. People trying to force their way in were crushed up against the glass, and they died of the same type of asphyxia. So it's extremely, extremely scary. And as I said, we count on the police, the private security to have things in hand, and in this case, they didn't. Comments, Philly?
Well, Billy, you referenced that 1991 Puff Daddy concert, P. Diddy. Anytime there's a large crowd, there's always a major concern for panic in the crowd. Now, not only you have people like we're going to show in the tape, jumping the gate and rushing in, that causes a panic. You could have simple things like, we're living in a world of post 9/11 with terrorism. Somebody says that there's a gun or a terrorist with active shooters and stuff like that. So you could have these stampedes in many different situations. So obviously, security being present, enough manpower is always of paramount importance in these type of events. And we got enough things to worry about when our kids go out to these events. This is just one more thing that is very concerning. And I'm sure we'll get into the exact, you were talking about the asphyxia. I'd like to talk about that later on.
Sure.
With the medical definitions, let's say, and what actually transpires when that happens.
All right, let's put this on the screen. We're going to give this a listen.
Officials are still trying to piece together what happened at a Travis Scott concert that left 8 people dead. For one thing, why did the concert continue after fans were screaming that someone had died? And if crowd control plans were in place, why did so many people get killed or injured? We begin with a moment-by-moment timeline of the concert tragedy.
The mayhem at Astroworld began hours before Travis Scott took the stage. 2 p.m., hundreds of fans stampede across a parking lot. They easily pushed down chain-link fences and stormed into the venue. Hundreds more stormed through the VIP security gate. Even deputies on horseback couldn't bring the chaos under control. KTRK-TV reporter Micah Hatfield was there. Her crew shot the extraordinary footage.
We cover violent situations all the time, but that felt like something that was a next level for us. It was scary. I was shaking. I told my photographer, I have a feeling something bad is going to happen, but never could I have imagined that it would have been this.
Houston Police Chief Troy Finner was also worried and says he met with the singer and conveyed concerns about the energy in the crowd. 9:06 p.m. Travis Scott starts his performance. His girlfriend Kylie Jenner, their 3-year-old daughter Stormy, and Kendall Jenner watch from a VIP booth. The crowd includes other young children like this little type. Trouble begins almost immediately. 9:11 p.m. Thousands of fans rushed to get closer to the stage, crushing fans up front. There was panic as some fans try to escape over security barriers. Travis Scott, unaware of the impending doom, pumps up the crowd.
I want to see some rages, man. Who want to rage, man?
9:30 p.m. Medics in a golf cart try to make their way through the throng. CPR is being performed on one of the victims. 9:34 p.m. A hero emerges. Concert goer Sienna McCarty, a senior at Texas A&M, pleads with the cameraman to help her get the concert stopped. A young man joins her. Others in the crowd chant the same desperate message. 9:38 p.m. A mass casualty event is declared.
Folks are coming out of the crowd complaining of difficulty breathing, crushing type injuries. Seems like the crowd is compressing, I can tell.
Intensive care nurse Madeline Eskins passed out in the crush, but the moment she recovered, she began helping others.
You couldn't move, you couldn't turn your head, you couldn't lift your arms up. It was like hell. 4 or 5 people in front of me were getting cardiac arrest. This was appalling.
9:42 p.m. Travis Scott stops performing for a few moments as an injured fan is treated.
We need somebody to help him. Somebody passed out right here.
He watches as the unconscious fan is passed over people's heads before continuing to perform. Outside the venue, fleets of fire trucks and ambulances are on the scene, but the band plays on for 37 minutes. Travis Scott later posted this video expressing sorrow and concern.
I'm honestly just devastated, and I could never imagine anything like this just happening. My fans really mean the world to me.
Kylie Kylie Jenner, who is pregnant, posted, "We weren't aware of any fatalities until the news came out after the show, and in no world would have continued filming or performing." 10:15 p.m. The last song is sung, but it's too late. 8 are dead and 25 hospitalized.
Crazy, right?
Disgusting. I mean, 38 minutes it went on and they didn't stop the show. Where were the officials that were monitoring this show? I mean, there's so many things I want to say, but that's the first thing that jumps out at me. When they realized that they had a mass casualty event, they had ambulances on the ready, the plug should have been pulled. And when those fans started jumping on the stage, that cameraman, he's got a headset. He should have radioed to somebody. They should have. I just don't get it. But I guess we're going to go.
Phil, you know, something I want to just comment on something you said because it's so apropos. There has to be like an emergency switch where the director or the head of security can just pull the power, because pulling the power on these guys would surely let them know something horrendous is happening and you have to stop performing. Because by continuing performing, the stuff was still going on. People were still pushing forward. People were still dying. And they would seem to be unaware on the stage that this was going on at the level that it was.
You know what, Billy, I agree with you, but I don't know if shutting power off would have actually, that could have caused the problem too, because then maybe the crowd would have got unruly. They should have had communication with him. Stop the show for a second, ask him onto the side, say, listen, we have an emergency situation. Tell the people we're going to stop the concert for a few minutes to get the injured out. Everybody stand back, try and make room for the ambulances or the golf carts or whatever it is. He should have coordinated. It was up to him. He was performing. Somebody should have got right to him. I am sure there had to be communication right to him with a headset or somebody close to him where they said, hey, we have an emergency. Suppose there was a fire. Suppose there was shots fired. Something. The person that's on stage, obviously everybody in the crowd is focused on that person. So that would be the person that I would want to communicate with the crowd. And when we talk about the crushing injuries, there's such a phenomenon that occurs where pushing from the back, and then the people that are getting pushed start pushing back towards, people in the front start pushing to the back, and the people in the middle wind up, they're not able to expand and contract their lungs, and they have the passing out, which leads to cardiac arrest and death.
Well, Phil, one of the things that I had thought of, and look, I'm not a concert security expert, and I'm sure there is security techniques they use that control crowds of this 50,000 people. I know that New Year's Eve, and this is just an idea, the NYPD gets 1 million people to Times Square. And one of the things they do, which to me makes a lot of sense, is they put people in pens, maybe, 500, 1,000 person pens. And the pens are made by either steel barriers that surround them. And once you leave, you cannot come back in. But the point is, there's not able someone from the back to push up and all the people in the front get crushed and asphyxiated. That's the security of the pens, what that does. I could be wrong, but this—
No, you're making a great point, Bill. You're making a great point. That really is something that should be considered, because the way what you just described, you have over 1 million people in Times Square, and the pens, once they get to a certain point where people are comfortable, but yet they're fully packed, they close it off, and then they have a space in between the next pen, and then you fill the other pen. And there's also channels on both sides for emergency workers, police, EMS, fire, whoever, to be able to get in and out safely. So if there is an emergency, someone passes out in one of those pens, they can extricate them and then, bring in a stretcher and take them away to for medical attention.
Exactly, because there should be an alleyway going down the middle that EMS or an ambulance could get in to get people in and out quickly. If you look at this crowd, that doesn't seem to be happening there, because what we're looking at, the picture is the side of the stage. Out in front of the stage, there's no way an emergency medical service or an ambulance or even security could get through that crowd. So, it looks like, and why was the Houston police chief, he was concerned before this happened. So why was some of his concerns not put into, well, it's hard to change things minutes before a concert. But this seems like a disaster waiting to happen, and look, rock and roll, rap, concerts, they're high energy. And, people want to have a good time. They're jumping up and down, they're screaming. And that in itself, gets people high energy, gets them excited. But this crowd seemed to be, when I saw the video of the crowd rushing into that and not paying, look at this, how close they are together. That's got to be dangerous when you just sell unlimited tickets and it's standing room only. Like, what is the space? What is the, personal space that each person has? That's got to be dangerous as hell.
100%, Billy. And could you do me a favor? Just put back up the first picture if you could. I just want to make a comment about that because you brought up Times Square, not that one, the one right before it. It was like an aerial shot. Before one more. I'm sorry, Bill.
Oh, this one.
All right, that one. Now, if you look at that, now that looks like a very wide open area, obviously. Now, what you described for Times Square, obviously, all the streets in and around the Times Square going a few blocks away from where the ball drops are closed off. There's only entrances into the sidewalks. You can actually access the sidewalks so that way people could get to their buildings or restaurants or stores or whatever. Now, they have it channeled off from a far distance. There's great security on New Year's Eve in Times Square. This looks like it was way too wide open. If they would have enlisted those pens that you were describing, the steel barriers, it would have been much more been able to have been controlled with spaces in between. So that way, if someone does breach one, it doesn't go right into the other one. And you also need a lot of manpower. Now, that's one point I wanted to make. The other point is you had the people rushing the gates, the security gates, where the metal detectors are at 2:00 in the afternoon. This concert didn't take place until 9:00 in the evening or somewhere thereabouts. So you had all those hours. That's 7 hours. I mean, if someone gets through a security gate in an airport, what do? They close it down and they throw everybody out and they rescreen everyone. Now, I don't know if that was even possible in a situation like this, but suppose somebody got through that crowd with a gun that rushed the gate and they, maybe it was a coordinated terrorist attack. It could, let's rush the gate. We'll send the guys in with a couple of guns and then they create a mass casualty event as a terrorist attack, So there needed to be better security in this situation. I think the first red flag was the 2 p.m. incident. That was the catalyst to a disaster right there. They knew they had people who are, like you said, Billy, they're high energy. They're hyped up to see this Travis Scott. It's a concert atmosphere. I get it. Sometimes, a lot of times people are drinking or using marijuana, narcotics. So there's even more energy in the crowd. They really needed to take this a little bit more seriously. And, in New York, I know that, just in a restaurant, you have an occupancy. There's building codes within New York City that you can only have a certain number of people on a Friday or a Saturday night. Sometimes people will go into a fire inspector will go into a restaurant that looks like it's overcrowded based on complaints, and they'll say, "Hey, shut it down. You're only supposed to have 150 people in here. We did a head count of 200. You got to get 50 people out." Things like that. So with these big events,
this was way beyond that. This was
absolutely.
I mean, you just saw them pouring in like a sieve.
Yeah.
And now you don't know who's got in. They didn't buy tickets. They're just crashing the gate and you have no control. And these are potentially people that are going to cause problems in the concert because they didn't think enough to buy a ticket. So,
right. They're already starting off on the wrong foot.
And right, as you said, they never went through a metal detector. Let me just play a little bit of this news video here.
Sure.
Search to have a good time, not to die. This morning, grieving families are asking what went wrong here and who's accountable. This morning, multiple lawsuits against Travis Scott, Live Nation, and even rap superstar Drake filed after the Astroworld Music Festival in Houston turned deadly.
I reported that people were getting stepped on.
Officials launching a criminal investigation into the chaotic concert that left at least 8 people dead and many others hurt. 50,000 fans gathering to see rapper Travis Scott, a Houston native and Astroworld founder, perform. As he took to the stage around 9:15 p.m., the crowd, as seen in this Apple Music live stream, pushing their way forward, forcing people into the barricades.
Our barricade even started to break, and the security had to come over to us and like start strapping the rails.
People unable to move, some collapsing to the ground. 19-year-old Quentin Savage was trampled on while trying to pull his brother out of a human body pile.
I was telling people like there are dead bodies over there, and nobody believed me.
Crowd chanting, "Stop the show." Scott still performing throughout the chaos. In this video, a seemingly unconscious man is carried through the crowd as Travis Scott looks on nearby. At one point, Scott even seemingly acknowledging an ambulance on the scene.
It's an ambulance in the car. Whoa, whoa.
He noticed some people were like passed out.
But as he resumed, fans are heard pleading for help. This woman climbing the stage platform, pleading with the camera crew to stop the show and help. A security guard lost consciousness after being pricked in the neck by a substance, requiring Narcan to be revived. By 9:38 p.m., police declaring the scene a mass casualty incident. Shortly after, Scott pausing his song Skeletons to acknowledge someone in distress.
We need somebody to help him. Somebody passed out right here.
But police and medics seen tending to fans even as the show carries on for nearly 40 more minutes. Amidst the chaos, Drake joined Scott on stage. He posted these images from the night on his Instagram.
I'm honestly just devastated, and I could never imagine anything like this just happening.
The 30-year-old Scott addressing the tragedy to his 43 million fans on Instagram.
My fans really mean the world to me, and I always just really want to leave them with a positive experience.
Kylie Jenner, who he shares daughter Stormi with, commenting, quote, "I want to make it clear we weren't aware of any fatalities until the news came out after the show, and in no world would have continued filming or performing."
We will always celebrate you. You're in heaven, mijo.
Memorials honoring the victims with flowers and grieving notes.
He was talking to everyone how excited he was to be there and to go, and he was saving up money to go with his best friend Jacob, who also passed away.
Among those who died, Danish Beg, 27, 16-year-old Brianna Rodriguez, Axel Acosta and Franco Patino, both 21, and 23-year-old Rudy Pena, along with Jacob Jurinic. And 23-year-old Arturo Sanchez was also in that crush of people, suffering a heart attack during the melee. A nurse who didn't want to be identified saved his life.
Oh, I'm so happy.
We were there as the once strangers reunited for the first time since the tragedy.
How many people did you try to help?
I helped 3 others, but it's kind of like a prioritization thing. You have to move on to the ones who can survive. And this is it. These are the people who survived.
The Houston mayor is vowing a thorough investigation into what happened at this event. A concert goer who suffered broken ribs and multiple broken bones filed a $1 million lawsuit Sunday against Travis Scott, Live Nation, and show organizers, referencing chaos at other Travis Scott concerts.
It's happened before, history has repeated itself, and we hope that by filing this lawsuit and the many other lawsuits that are guaranteed to follow, that Travis Scott and other artists like him understand concert goers want to be safe.
We heard from so many people who were at this concert event, and they were talking about the crush of people and how they literally were fighting for their lives to get out of that crowd. Robin, they said that this simply should not have happened.
Marcus, thank
you. You know, Phil, it's so emotional when you watch that, to see these young people went to this concert to have a good time, and 8 of them at least wound up dead. And I think there was many more. I think a couple of hundred, over 300 were injured.
Sure.
And you know, there is, look, it's easy. There is blame here. There was some real negligence here. You know, in no concert should hundreds or thousands of people be able to knock fences down and storm the location. Either you don't have enough people there, or there's not the proper barriers to prevent them from flying in there like that. And, you know, the whole thing was continuing the concert as people are dying. That's very poor communication. Someone has to have that shutoff switch that can stop that, or at least to make an announcement to stage. We're going to stop the music. We got some emergencies here. You know, people are literally, they're dying at this concert.
It's really quite shocking to watch. And, you know, we were talking before we went on the air, you and I, about how you could only be 10 feet away from, you know, the crowd, and you can't see what's going on in front of you or behind you. That when you're in a big crowd like that and you're shoulder to shoulder, you're able to only know what's going on, the few people in front of you, let's say 10, 15 feet ahead of you. So if there's a crush where people are being trampled or they're being, you know, they're going into cardiac arrest, you may not even know it. That's why the central thing is the person who's performing on stage where everybody's focused on. That's the person who needed to communicate. Maybe guys in the back, step back a little bit, push back. And, you know, all of these different venues, they have maximum occupancy capacity set forth. The buildings department in the local areas, or, you know, there's a National Fire Protection Association that has standards. These are the things that they look at before they do a venue, and they tell them how many tickets they can sell, what's the maximum capacity. It sounds like there was no rules followed here with regard to how they sold it out. And, you know, like you brought up, I'm going to bring up New Year's Eve in Times Square, the NYPD. They channel everybody into an area, and they have it where there's no real choke points, where they can cut off a choke point, meaning that a choke point is where nobody can move one way or the other. And they don't have that. The way they have it set up, because there's separations in them pens, you know, it makes it that there can be 1 million people in Times Square and they can get in and out safely. Like you said, once they go into those pens, if they leave, they're not allowed back in. If they try to come back in, they go to the end of the line. So they could start out right underneath the ball in the first pen. And if they leave, they'll wind up 10 blocks away in, you know, the 25th pen or something like that. So I think that it sounds like, yeah, there's going to be accountability here for some people, whether it be Travis Scott himself, the promoters of the event, who owns the venue. I mean, there has to be some kind of a standard, a safety standard set that shows how much occupancy that area can be, you know, what's the capacity of that area safely.
Well,
That's
Phil, you know, you're 100% right, but because this is an outdoor venue, they may not have the same occupancy laws, but they're also, I mean, what is the ratio of security to concert goers? Like if there's 50,000 people, how many security guards do you need to have? How many police? You know, how many fire marshals do you need there? How many EMS? I don't know if they have doctors on the scene of these locations, because it sounded like Narcan may have been a problem at least a couple of times. But I think it was erroneously reported by some media that someone was going around just shooting people in the neck, like with some kind of drug that was, you know, making them go overdose, because one of the security guards that said he needed to be revived with Narcan. But I think most of this was what we know as asphyxia due to chest compression, resulting in cardiac arrest. And it's horrendous to see. As we say, this isn't something new. This has happened. If you ever watch the European soccer games, they've had incidents where 200 people have been crushed to death when, you know, different groups just push forward and they're stuck up against the walls. I mentioned the Who concert back in 1979, the CCNY tragedy in 1991 in New York City. These are, you know, we have to learn lessons from this. You know, I wanted to mention one, and I'm going to really show my age here, but the Rolling Stones at Altamont Speedway, and I believe this was either the late 60s or early 70s, they made the most ridiculous move of hiring the Hells Angels as security. Like what genius made that decision? They hired the Hells Angels to work security at the concert, and it turned out one guy got knifed, another guy got shot. One guy was killed right in front of the stage.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was the Hells Angels running the security there. Oh, what could possibly go wrong with this? You know,
Billy, it was the 60s. You know, everybody was in a haze in the 60s and all the, you know, all the drugs going around. And,
you know, anyone in the chat that remembers that, put a 1 in the chat. I want to see if there's anyone as old as Phil and I here that remembers that.
I was born in 60 and I vaguely remember things like that, but I do know about the Hells Angels for sure. But yeah, I mean, listen, Billy, there's quite a few events. I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different events that you talked about, mass casualties. There was the P. Diddy. There was an event where there was a large crowd of the soccer fans in Nepal. It started to rain and they tried to run towards closed exits, and several people were killed in that one. In Saudi Arabia in 2015, 2,400 people dead on a Hajj pilgrimage where people, again, they just rushed in. And when there's a choke point where they're all trying to get to one space, but there's no way for them to go left or right or backwards. And they wind up what you talked about, the chest compressions. And, there's a real easy way for average people to understand about chest compressions. If you take a Taylor's tape measure and just put it around your chest and put it tight for a second, and around under your arms and around you, and just hold it tight for a second, and then try to take a deep breath, and your chest expands, you'll see how that thing is not going to stay in place. You could even do it with a piece of string, let's say. So what's happening is now you're outside, you're excited, you don't realize your chest is going in and out. Now you get crushed and you're not able to expand your lungs to take in oxygen. And what happens is in a minute or two, you're unconscious, and now you're still being crushed. And then the oxygen to your brain is diminished and the blood flow. And, shortly after you go into cardiac arrest. And if you're not revived within 2 minutes, serious complications will set in, like brain damage.
Phil, and we know this as cops, because especially myself as a boss, when I would go to the scene of an arrest and I saw an officer have a guy cuffed and he still had his knee in the guy's back, I would tell the cop, get your knee off his back.
Right.
And sometimes they'd look at me like, oh, Sarge, you got to boss me around. Yeah, I do. Because if you keep your knee in his back and all your body weight on him, he's going to die. So take your knee off his back so he can breathe. He's cuffed. He's not going to hurt you, But that's a real problem. And that's why, with police departments, that law, the diaphragm law, was over some things like that, where people have died through something called restraint asphyxia. And
Yes.
That's what this really is. It's restraint asphyxia, but it's worse because they're being pushed up against an immovable object, and there's no chance for their chest to move back and forth so they can breathe.
Bill, you brought up making an arrest and putting handcuffs on someone. Now, I've had hundreds of times, maybe even thousands, where I was present during arrest situations, handcuffs and all that. And sometimes you got somebody who's flailing around. But once the handcuffs are on, you really just have to worry about their legs. And there's really no need to sit on a person's chest. As you said, you can manipulate them in a way where they're still able to breathe, maybe turn them on their side. And then we would have leg restraints usually available by patrol or emergency service. And you can strap their legs together. And then they really become, and then they even have that jacket that ESU carries, or certain,
it's like a straight jacket. Yeah,
it's almost like a straight,
yeah.
Where you're able to breathe, your chest can expand and contract. However, your legs aren't free to flail and injure somebody as well as your hands. So, I mean, we're learning from those things. And obviously, when you're in a, you can you lose track of things. You're fighting for your life. You get somebody handcuffed and they're, so now you lean on them, and someone like you said, you were a boss, you came on and said, guys, pull up, maybe God forbid you could send this guy into cardiac arrest, and maybe you pull them, they get to back down to to reality for a second, because in the heat of things you can, you lose your focus, and now you're just glad that you got this guy handcuffed, and you're happy that you're able to take control of the situation. So, but
100%. Folks, if you like police off the cuff from real crime stories from a police perspective, please go to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up. We have some channel members. We have 5 different levels. $2.99 a month. You're the bucket. $6.99 a month. You can. Now I'm forgetting what it is. Coffee with Cannon. $9.99 a month. You can polish my rack. $24.99 a month. You're dipped in butter, and the premier $49.99 a month. Heated dipped in butter. So if you guys want to join our club, be part of the Police Off the Cuff family, but please at least hit the subscribe button. We're trying to give us this perspective. This is a really important story, because we all have family. We all have kids. Some of us have grandkids, and people go to concerts, large venues, and it's actually probably a good thing to be educated of what to look for. Where are the exits? How do I get the hell out of here? Where
exactly.
That's one of the most important things to know, is to know where the hell the exits are, because you see this concert. I mean, I want to play just a little more of a short clip here And it's just so scary watching this stuff.
Said investigators are now trying to talk to as many people as they can to piece together exactly what happened.
We are talking with individuals who have been hospitalized to try to get a much better understanding of what took place, what went wrong, where were the missteps.
The mayor also stressed how much worse this could have been if it wasn't for Good Samaritans stepping in to help some of the folks who got hurt or who had passed out. Roughly 50,000 people showed up for this 2-day music festival put on by Travis Scott. And when he took the stage last night, a little after 9, the crowd started surging forward to the stage, packing people in so tight that witnesses said it was hard to breathe. Some people started passing out, and the crowd was packed in so tight they couldn't get out. Some people got trampled, others crowd surfed lifeless bodies to try and get those folks help.
And I witnessed somebody unconscious struggling to get out, like their friends were trying to get him out, and just people weren't caring enough to like make a path.
We're sitting here saying, oh, I had the time of my life, but it's scary to think that was the last time some of these people ever even had a life.
Today, Travis Scott, a Houston native, released a statement saying, in part, I'm absolutely devastated by what took place last night. My prayers go out to the families and all those impacted by what happened at Astroworld Festival. I am committed to working together with the Houston community to heal and support the families in need. Texas Governor Greg Abbott also weighed in saying, what happened at Astroworld Festival last night was tragic, and our hearts are with those who lost their lives and those who were injured in the terrifying crowd surge. The event's organizers have also released a statement saying they are cooperating with this investigation. Police just told us a short time ago that all the footage of that event will be turned over later this evening for investigators to start reviewing.
You know, one of the things that happened in 1991 where 9 people lost their lives at CCNY was there was a huge investigation, of course, in regards to what went wrong there. And one of the things that went wrong was that it was oversold. So there was some greed there. They oversold the show, and the people that bought tickets, they weren't letting them in. So they started pushing, and that, you know, I'm oversimplifying it, but that was one of the biggest things. And actually, P. Diddy, or whatever he was called, he's had 10 different names since 1991, Puff Daddy, Double P Diddy. I don't know. I don't know what he goes by now. He actually got personally sued, and he settled with some of the families because there was 9 people that lost their lives, and he personally got sued. So this could happen here too. And I don't know what Travis Scott's role was. Did he, besides performing, was he the promoter? Did he run everything? Some promoters, some performers do that now. So again, maybe they were cutting corners. Maybe they didn't have enough security, you know. So these are some of the questions that the investigation surely needs to answer.
Well, I think there was definitely a communications breakdown. Now, I'm going to take him at his word when he said publicly on Twitter there was a press release, and he obviously is taking the position that he had no idea that any of this was going on. So someone had the responsibility to get a hold of him through some type of communication and let him know what was going on. Stop the show for a second, announce, guys, please, we're having a little bit of a situation, without causing a panic, because you got 50,000 people in that area. If you say the wrong thing, you could have a stampede. And, make way for ambulances. We're going to stop the show for 10 or 15 minutes. Everybody chill out, relax, move back a little bit, or coordinate with him. He really was central and key to averting a disaster. And apparently, they never stopped the show until it was over. It never really ended, and they carried on. They brought in that other guy that they mentioned. He might be getting sued too. What's his name? The other guy, he was there.
Drake.
Yes, Drake.
Yeah.
My kids will kill me that I didn't know his name. I forgot his name. But, but when Drake was there, my point is that they were carrying on like business as usual. Now I know during big events there are different things. Somebody could faint or pass out, and it's usually a minor medical thing. But somebody needed to get a hold of him. Whoever was in charge of security needed to say, like you said, there has to be a system in place to pull the plug. Pull the plug meaning, all right, it's over, stop it. Get a hold of him, get him on the side, say, listen, you got people being crushed in the crowd. Announce that we're going to postpone the concert for a few minutes, have everybody try to move back, and, you know, alleviate the problem and let the emergency personnel through, that may have saved lives. That's what I see here. And again, we have that 7-hour lag between 2:00 in the afternoon when they started rushing until 9:00 at night when this thing started. What went on then? Did they reassess what they had? Did they realize they had too many people? Now, I also found from the article you sent me, Billy, that there's been concerts canceled because of large crowds with some big names. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, Eminem, Oasis. You know, so it's not like this has never happened before where they see that the crowd is too big. There's just too much going on and they pull the plug on it and they cancel it. Concerts are canceled for a lot of different reasons. You know, a singer or a performer can come up with laryngitis or, you know, an illness, the flu, whatever. So, I mean, in a situation like this, if it was assessed properly, they may have actually called it off when they saw that people were rushing in. You can't have a safe venue when you have people running through barriers. Now, you don't have an idea of how many people are even in this venue because so many crashed the gates, you know?
You know, it seemed like the earlier video we showed, at least it seemed to me like it was thousands of people crashed the gate. So that's potentially really, that's a huge security problem, of course, because these are people that didn't pay for their ticket. They're people that don't respect the law. They knock down the fences. I just want to mention, I kept this picture up on the screen, and you could see to the left, there's a huge tent. That is usually where the sound system is, and the sound people can usually coordinate with the folks on the stage who they have to be able to speak to. That's where it should have been coordinated somehow through walkie-talkie, whatever. We got a real problem in here, and let's shut it down.
You're making a great point, Billy, because if you look at where Travis is, he's on the right of the screen there. And so they were back. They probably had a better view of what was going on in the crowd. And from that, you know, that's like the command center of the whole show. They're controlling sound, lighting, all of that. They easily could have communicated to someone on that stage, listen, we have an issue. We need to stop the show momentarily. We got to get some EMS personnel through. There's people that are passing out now. One of the other points that I want to make, they talked about Narcan being used on several patients. Now, initially, when people were unconscious, they thought they were drug overdoses. That may be why they use the Narcan to, you know, obviously it's used to save a person who's overdosing, save their life and bring them out of it. And when they realized, you know, this person's not breathing, they did the Narcan. When that didn't work, then they must have, you know, gone on to realize that it was a crushing incident. And then when you see the people being pulled over the security barriers, I think it was quite obvious of what was going on, what was taking place. And that was a great point about that tent, Billy.
Yeah, you know, Phil, it's like, as we said earlier on, this is not unprecedented. This has happened before.
Yes.
And I mean, remember they had those concerts on Randall's Island in New York City? They had a huge drug problem there. And I don't know exactly, I'm not so up on the drugs now since I've been out of the police department. It may have been ecstasy. People were passing out and, you know, people were dying actually on Randall's Island during this concert. And what happened was the promoters were real smartasses. They hired their own ambulances. And it wasn't New York City EMS, because if you call EMS in New York City, accompanied with the ambulance comes the police.
Right.
So these promoters had their own ambulances. So the police were never notified that people were being taken away to hospitals. And several of them, I don't have the count right now, died.
Yes.
So when you see that, like sometimes unscrupulous promoters, and look, they're not immune from the profit motive either, where they'll ignore safety for the money. Because that happens. We saw that happen on the film set Rust. I'm sure it happens in the in the concert world too. I would really like to know what was the ratio between 50,000 people and how many security guards, and what is the rule of thumb? If you have 50,000 people, how many security guards do you need there?
Yeah, good point, Billy. And that concert that you're referencing, where they were ingesting ecstasy, and when you ingest ecstasy, it makes you very dehydrated. So they were The sun was out. It was warm. It was a hot day, and they knew that there was going to be casualties of people passing out from dehydration. So they got their own ambulances, like you said, because they didn't want any police interaction. Because it was clear that it was probably people that are, ingesting drugs. So yeah, they played that. It's capitalist society we live in, so they were playing that angle, not to screw up their payday.
100%. British Chippy. First of all, I love the name.
Love it.
Secondly, here's your comments. For me, it's basic human decency. You see artists addressing the crowd with even one fainter in the crowd. They push for respect. This bloke was on a platform looking down. Sorry, he knew it was bad. Well,
Possible.
Thank you, British Chippy. Great comment. Yeah, let me see some of the other folks in the chat. Scout Inquirer. This was such a horrific tragedy. Prayers for the victims and their family and all EMS. 100% Scout Inquirer. Thank you so much for your comments. T. Michelle Smith, she's a member of the Police Off the Cuff family. It's really sad that people cannot act healthy. It's tragic that the performer did not prepare safely. Did not perform, should have been safely. But factual breakdown, what do you got there? Oh, no, that's a personal comment to someone else in the chat. Peter Pranzo. Perfectly said, Bill. It only takes a handful of disorderly people can cause a stampede. Lieutenant Pete, you know that, right? And we keep referencing Times Square. And you remember back in the day, Lieutenant Pete, that Times Square during New Year's Eve was just, they used to call it Robbery Central. And it was just like a robbery festival. And people didn't understand that came to the city from all over the world that don't go to Times Square on New Year's Eve. They tried to act like, oh, it's a beautiful place to go. But we as anti-crime knew it was Robbery Central and street crime also, right? I mean, that every member of street crime worked New Year's Eve no matter what, unless he was in a cast or in the hospital. You worked Times Square on New Year's Eve. So we knew what to expect. But having said that, the NYPD has it down pretty well. And I'm not comparing, you really can't compare, I guess, New Year's Eve to a concert. It's a whole different ball game, but some of the same security tenets are used in both events, I think.
I think they should learn from New Year's Eve because, again, you referenced over 1 million people go to Times Square. And, they just, like I said earlier, they just cut it off from all, you can't travel freely through that area from the morning of New Year's Eve. You have the pen set up and there's roadblocks for the traffic and stuff. And then once they start filling those pens, you can only access the sidewalks to get to, and there's checkpoints all along the way. I mean, if you're going to go in and say, I live here, they'll ask you for identification, so it's pretty stringent. Obviously it's a high value target for a terrorist attack. So it's been very, very secure for years, and it remains that way. But in these large events, they could probably learn a little something. I mean, we've referenced a half a dozen events that we know about where people have died. I mean, the thing in Saudi Arabia, 2,400 people died. The other events, 100 people, 11 people. It's still a lot of people dying, and they really need to brush up on this and get with the program, figure out a way to do it safely. And if you got to cut it off, at half the amount of people, I mean, less money is going to be made, but there's not going to be any casualties. This is not war. This is a concert. You're supposed to go there and come home in one piece.
100%. Jeffrey Colbert. At Texas Lassie, I didn't mean to imply an ignorance, merely that as a regular concert and rave goer, a former drug dealer, I'm glad you admitted to that, and a person in attendance at this event, that drugs always make their way in. Jeffrey Colbert, you're 100% correct. There's no concert that's going to be drug-free. And I think it's somewhat, I don't think the security is looking to enforce drug laws at a concert, but, people act differently when they're on drugs also. So, I just think, that is part of, I guess, the experience going back to the 1960s,
Billy, I was at an Engelbert Humperdinck concert a few weeks back in Atlantic City, and I don't think
I sing you to sleep after the lovin'.
That's
with
my
a
wedding
song
song.
I just wrote yesterday.
That's my wedding song. My wife and my mother-in-law love him, so we went to see him, and I doubt there was many drugs at that concert. Maybe some Geritol and things like that, Lipitor, but no illegal drugs, I would venture to say.
I
And
don't
by the
think
way,
so.
He's in his 80s. He put on a fantastic show. I can't believe he had a lot of movement yet. He sang great. It was actually a great show. I almost wasn't even going to go. I was trying to get my sister-in-law to sit in for me because I was saying, well, it can't be a good show. He's in his 80s. I wound up going. It was fantastic. So,
and I know no one was crashing the gate at the Engelbert Humperdinck concert. They didn't have the energy. They have to knock it with their walkers. You know?
It's hard to get a walker through when you're trying to crash the crowd.
And I know my song isn't playing anything new because
my wife could hear this now.
She's in love with you. Engelbert Humperdinck. He should have changed his name, though. I think
that's not his real name. That's a stage name, believe it or not. I forget what his real name is. I got to look it up after we go off. But yeah, but it was actually a good show. Obviously, very safe. I was just trying to, have a little laugh about the Geritol in there. But obviously, those venues are much smaller. They're a lot more coordinated, a lot more security. It was in a hotel in Atlantic City, and big hotel with a casino, Harrah's. And anyway, so yeah, with these type of things, they may have to cut them back on sizes, how many tickets they sell. And if crowds show up, you have to have it controlled where there's no way in. If you push through, you're not going to do it. It has to be enough of a police presence, a security presence, barriers, whatever you got to do. I mean, there's ways that you can rope off an area ahead of time, secure it, and have it where there's only, people in charge that can, access the exits to let people out if there's an emergency, and only one way in or several ways in, but they're all manned by security. And, again, we don't want weapons going into these things. When you saw them crashing those metal detectors, that right there, that was the first red flag for me that something not good was going to happen.
Yeah, to me, that was very scary. Folks, again, if you're not, I see some new names in the chat. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to Police Off the Cuff. Go to our YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. Linda Sheldon, this is the first time I've seen you here. We are becoming a society that is idolizing the wrong people and things. The bigger the sacrifice, the better their future. Sending negative vibes in their thing, in my opinion. Well, you have a good opinion, Linda Sheldon. It's scary, these things. I when my kids tell me they're going to a concert, I always get a little crazy. And I don't like being in crowds. I just don't like it. Maybe it's from my police experience. And I never liked being, in that, claustrophobic feeling of being inside a crowd. I just never liked it. And
absolutely, I agree with you.
And that's probably why I don't really love going to concerts. My wife's always like, "Oh, you want to come with us to the concert?" I'm like, "Nah, I think I'll pass."
Billy, from our experience as law enforcement officers, I noticed something the other day. I went to visit relatives. A cousin of mine has a beautiful apartment in a 40-story building down in Dumbo, Brooklyn, right near the Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge area. And I noticed when we went and, we went up to the apartment on the 31st floor, I believe. Down low, near about 6 inches from the floor, they had a stencil of the apartment number. Now, the reason for that is this: in a fire, God forbid, there's smoke that comes down and you'll have to crawl on the floor, and, you'll be able to see, all right, this is an apartment if you're trying to make it to an exit. And then obviously the exits are marked as well. So these are the things that, fire safety comes up with. Fire Protection Association, I referenced them earlier. You go to a hotel, this is really off of what we're talking about specifically, but maybe it's helpful to someone. You check into a hotel. I always tell, my daughter was in a hotel about a week or two ago. I said, make sure you go in the hallway, know where the fire exit is, the staircase is. And if you have to get out of there in the smoke, you can count 3 doors over, 4 doors over, 5 doors across, whatever it is. And if in a fire you're panicking, there's very little room for error. You can make it to that exit and possibly get out with your life. And things like this, sometimes you have to do the thinking for the people in a large crowd like this. And they may have set it up in a way that it just led to this horrible disaster.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing. I almost feel like we could keep talking about this, but we have another show at 7 o'clock tonight.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito at 7. So we sort of have to exit stage left. And, Phil, you always come up with some amazing things. And that's why I love you as my co-host. I can just toss it to you and I don't have to worry that you're going to give me a one-word answer.
I try. You know, it is. It's interesting to me. I want to be connected to what's going on currently, and you know, I guess it's just like it's like a mini investigation, so to speak. You know, so it's second nature to me to get into something and dissect it a little bit, and I'm sure the same thing with you, Bill.
Patty L, so glad I caught you live. No, don't go. Well, we're going to be live again at 7, just a different topic. We were a little reluctant to take on this topic just because it's, you know, it's very controversial, and you know, it's in the beginning stages of the investigation. But I said let's jump in on it, and we're not going to get too judgmental. Obviously, there was a lot of mistakes made in this case. 8 people wouldn't be dead, and no one would be doing a huge investigation on this. Phil, final words.
Final words. I just hope that there could be some changes in security protocols going forward. Let's learn from these other incidents as well as this incident. Condolences to the families of people that lost loved ones. I only hope and pray that they can find some comfort in maybe going forward, that we're not going to allow this to happen again. And I guess that's it for now, and we'll see you at 7 o'clock. We're going to go over the latest on the Gabby Petito investigation, Brian Laundrie investigation. So we're going to catch up on some of the latest facts on that. Bill, you were out there. What was it, yesterday?
Yeah, I was in the Myakkahatchee Creek Reserve yesterday.
Right.
And I'm going to talk about that at 7 o'clock. I don't want to give it all away now.
No.
I want you guys to come, and I'm going to talk about my experience there.
Yes.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening. On behalf of myself, Bill Cannon, and my co-host Phil Grimaldi, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you at 7 o'clock. Have a great night.
See you at 7, guys. Stay safe.
One episode just ain't enough.